Greetings, dear friends. We continue working with the news page. I promised you that I would show how to create a template for taxonomy. So I will now go to the category for our news, and we see the basic sound default template. So in WordPress, there is a hierarchy, there is one global O template. And if we do not set specific personal templates for certain types of pages, it always uses this main archive. And consequently, we see it on the screen now. The main archive. We do not see the news because we have not selected categories for our news. Let's start by adding a category. Go to the news, open some news item, and select the necessary taxonomy. So I don't see the taxonomy, it seems. Apparently we missed something during registration, so let's go to the code and see what we registered there. As far as I remember, we added this in the must use plugins, so let's go to that file. And let's search. We have the post type registration, but our taxonomy is not displaying. Here is our taxonomy registration. And check. All public show UA show admin column. So the show and rest needs to be added. This parameter will be responsible for displaying in the REST API. The same applies to post types. When you register a new post type, if you don't add such a parameter, you will have the classic editor instead of Gutenberg. Therefore, I think our problem is solved now. Let's refresh the page. Yes, indeed, here it is. The news category has appeared. And for this news, we will select 3 categories right away. Next, if I refresh this page now, I already get directly the result on the page, but we need to deal with the template. I don't have a design specifically for category pages, but I will show you how to implement it technically, how to create the necessary file. However, we probably won't style the page itself. We use a similar approach as in the previous lesson. That is, remember, we have a theme, and in the theme, there is a template directory. In this directory, we created active news, and this file will be used as an active page for taxonomy. A very similar approach. We created a taxonomy file in the same directory. Dash and further. The name of this taxonomy, our taxonomy, is called news. Categories with an underscore, meaning there is a 100% part match to the name. Hastim. Everything is great. Now I have created an empty file, and if I refresh the page, it will load an empty template for me. I can now style the necessary blocks in this file. Let's take the default code from on archive, touch the mark, and insert it into the taxonomy. Refresh again. And we get this default template which has been there until now. In other words, until we start creating the taxonomy, news categories, news archive, it will use this global file because it has priority. But if I need to personalize the page, I create my own separate files and then change the code inside to suit my needs. All right, basically that's clear. We can't do anything here yet since we don't have a block for news. We will probably put the focus now on creating this block, and then we can distribute it both for the archive and for the category. There are 2 approaches to implementing this block. One approach, as we used for recent news, is to create a separate dynamic block, and it will have its own separate query that will fetch the latest 6 and display pagination below them. We can consider this option, or we can consider another option to create a separate block for this specific news item and display it in a loop in the template. Let's go probably into the editor and by default WordPress. For such pages, let's go into the editor. Uses a special block, a global block. Will you see it now? We will now find our new page here in the lists. Here it is, taxa, news category. Let's go into it because I have now inserted it by default. You see, in this group we have a query loop. This query loop is the global block responsible for generating tone directly, this grid. But inside, the default template here accepts a certain post template, no result, and so on. So in this post template, we will be able to essentially call our personal blog, and thus we will use this blog on different pages. Let's try to implement this approach. So for this, we will create a new blog. This blog will be dynamic. Let's take as a basis as well recent news. Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. Let's name it news. Box. So this block will be 100% dynamic, so there will be no attributes here. We remove these attributes. In the admin part, we probably won't have much either. Maybe we'll just display some kind of placeholder. So let's edit this part as well. Remove all the loading. Only the profile block. We leave their profits block. This component and the control spectrum, and we remove everything inside it because we won't have settings. Sidebar. Let's take another look at it and think, no, all the dynamic data here is taken from the post type section, so indeed we have nothing. This report won't be here. It can be removed from here. Meaning inside. I'm not sure we need server-side rendering, so we'll remove it. And for now, we'll just temporarily write post their play. Only specify the news post play. And then we'll replace this phrase with a placeholder for an image from here. We remove the site render. We choose to load translation. Among the following attributes, we no longer use them, so we can remove and clean them up from here like this. This code will simply display this word, and it won't do anything else for you. Remove, or for the admin panel. Index.js and Jest we do not edit, and regarding styles, let's edit a little bit regarding styles. Firstly, we have this global selector for the block, and it will be the box itself. Therefore, we change the ID for news and remove all the unnecessary parts until the moment we find this news item. We'll probably twist it like this. These two interest us. It pulls let's not cite. Copy it from him so as not to create separate containers. And the style for the image too. I set it so well. It seems we've done it with the styles. Let's see further. We need to register this block. We go to bake PIFA. Create a callback for this. Block then we'll find the recent function. News and take from it. HTML layout. Here it is, this recent news function. But we remove Everything unnecessary, everything related to the loop, because we don't have a loop and won't have one. So firstly, we don't have background images. We keep the container and call get block rapport on it from the guides. In other words, we are essentially simulating this line. Next, we remove this check. We remove this data title and description. We remove this. Essentially, all we need is from here, so we remove these two. So, the image, the heading, the button, and the closing div. All of this is unnecessary. Next, I look and suggest closing some div. We count, one opened. And now we've closed it. No, we don't need to close anything. It's neat here. So, okay. Basically, this block is implemented. In it, we use functions without any hard coding, meaning when we don't pass an ID, it will use the global one. And since this code logically will be inside a loop, it should pick it up and take the XR of the current post, the permalink of the current post, and so on. Now we will test, run the compiler. The compiler has started. Let's go to the admin section. I remind you that we are currently in the taxonomy menu Skatigar. This is a new file that we created, and I copied the code into it directly from the archive. In order to use the query loop, but the query loop can be added. And from here, that is, you see, all these blocks that are used in WordPress, we can find them here without any problems. I want, in this group, first of all, to remove this heading. Probably, I don't need it. Maybe I'll need it later. Don't need it. And inside the query loop, let's call our block here in the post template box. And I don't see it for some reason, because I didn't reload the page. Of course, I saved the page and will reload it. It was open for me before registering this block. Now let's try box. And place this block specifically in the post template. This way I can remove everything else. Actually, you don't need to create a separate block. You can attach a class to this post template like this and simply apply the necessary styles to the current elements. The approach is more comprehensive, meaning fewer movements are simpler. So I think it's better to create a separate block. Remove unnecessary blocks from here. Save. Well, the styles are not set, so everything looks like this. We will take care of that a little later. And update. And consequently, we get the news category to the archive page. And the design used is the one we need. Next, of course, we need to take care of the title. Either we use the same one as in the archive, or another one regarding the paddings here, but that's another question. In general, regarding the styling of news category pages, I showed you. Now let's return to our active page. We do the same thing, just like that, but specifically go to news and do the same thing. This block is needed here. I will take this group, copy it, Control C. Since it's empty, I deleted it. When I created the template and go into the news section, I select this control block, and by clicking on Go, not selecting, but just Control VP because it didn't replace it. We will add a paragraph, usually like this. Since I select here, place the cursor here and then press Control, and then it inserts it as if instead of a paragraph, not instead of my flower block, preserving. I go back, refresh, see 3 boxes, wonderful, moving on. Let's go to the settings. And set 1 post per page in the ring. This is updated globally for the entire site. Now we see 1 post and we see the pagination. If I use it, you see, everything works perfectly. The task was to show you that you can combine both ready-made WordPress blocks, Oko, and your personal ones. That is, when we use this approach and write functions not in a loop, but globally, it will pull data corresponding to the specific page. We're turning 3 posts back here. We have 6 by design, but I'm doing 3. And let's add 1 more news item, an additional test one. Now, how do we make them a row, as it is in our layout? We need to find the container of these posts and assign it a specific class. Let's look through the elements. Let's return to the editor. So let's open the tree and look at the elements here. So essentially, we have the ability to add a class to the post template on query, loop, and on the group. I think we can get rid of the group because the group will add many different properties from WordPress. And now we see, as it were, a wrapper, but in fact, this is not our wrapper. Here, a wrapper is added, which we set in the JSON file, along with additional paddings. You see, it doesn't match. Let's take a look through the inspector. So, yes, for the group, you see paddings and margins are created. I will probably get rid of it. I usually don't use it. Let's try to write the query loop this way. And we need to add the appropriate class to this query loop. First of all, let's add the wrapper. This is our global class. And ideally, now, we should have a separate wrapper. Yes, good. The only thing is, I don't see a match with the footer. Let's make sure why. So let's take a look at the footer. There might be an error in the footer. Yes, there's an error in the footer. Something is missing. God saving. Now you see our wrappers match. Well, let's fix this issue since we noticed it. Otherwise, it will bother us. So let's go to the footer block style. And with now, I'll add the inner footer class to it. I'll add a box, citing border box. The padding increased its width, and that's why there was a shift. All right, moving on to the query loop. And in this query loop, we have a list, post template. On this post template here, it is ideally we need to add a class, and I will take the class from the recent news block. Where is it? This class, actually no, stop. I won't take this class because it's too thematically. I will take its style. It would be more accurate to say take its style. Let's go back. Let's close it to avoid confusion. When there are many files, let's return to our C. And to our C. Outside of Axi, this selector is important because this selector, this box, specifically, this box, but I can throw styles for this page into the same file because it's logical since this box will be called on this page. Therefore, some styles for the container will also be loaded on this page. And I will create a box of this kind. And inside I'll throw in the styles that I had up to this point copied. This class I will set in the admin panel on this container that is on the blog post template itself. I will save, refresh the page, refresh the page. Wonderful. Now, the next step is to adjust the styles for the post itself, because the block post template generates a list and adds list items to it. Yes, and we are already making our block in our list item and setting the width to 30%, which is incorrect. It should be 100% or even 300%. As if this list item is being set, from here, we remove this width. We can, in principle, set it like this on the list item. No problem. And from here, we remove it. And even better to specify here, 100%, so that it takes everything from this parent Okay, good. Next, we see the following problem. Let's understand what the problem is. We have a container. Inside it, there are boxes, and we have now set styles so that they flex or in opposition. But up to this point, they had markers such as these margins need to be reset. I suggest we do that. Margin top 0, margin bottom 0. And on the list item and on the container, although stop on the container. It's unnecessary. We didn't set any specific markers here. Wonderful. Now, this aspect regarding markers is implemented. You see here at the top, we don't have a marker. It sticks to the upper container. At the bottom, there's no margin, either because it will be on the block that we will add now. Let's add this block as well. Let's return to the active page. Let's refresh it. Open the tree. Add a paragraph after the query. Place the cursor and call the call to action block. And fill it with data. By the way, the picture here looks unattractive. It's very large and it even shifts. Therefore, for this component, you can use a separate preview attribute, and it will simply show a small preview. You can sort of edit the blocks, improve it in this, because what's happening now is not very nice. Here, I don't know how we missed this moment. When I was recording the lesson, I didn't seem to notice the images stretching like that. It might be because we are in the editor area, not Gutenberg, and there is no maximum width here. In the sidebar for the image, this could also be a reason, but that's already a flaw, WordPress. But in any case, this component has a separate attribute. Here you see below, we probably don't need to set the marker either, because there is a block that this guy has, and if it weren't there, it is in the footer. Then all our blocks, we don't set anything on the fan container in principle. Everything is cool, everything turned out well. The next step is to adjust according to Gennady to what we have here. We have a completely different one according to Gennady. Here we have the next page, so we go to the admin panel. We select this according to Gennady. Or let's not select it. Just anywhere. Add a block and look for the tags. Press and add a fresh block according to Gennady. You see, in a separate block. According to Gennady, there are page numbers, but in ours there aren't. And I only need it for the backside, so I drag the page numbers, delete everything else. These components, or rather WordPress blocks, also consist of inner blocks with internal save, update, everything is cool. Here is our one according to Genotes, and next, as you understand, we need to style this according to Genotes. It is styled, again, in the same way. We assign a class, for example, when you press it. Or even without a class. Why a class? If we have, even if it is called according to Gennady, we can directly on its questions. It's not necessary to set styles strictly and bind them to a class. That is, essentially, we have this block, you press, and we will write these styles on it. The second point is this matter. Of course, logically, it should be moved to some global CSS or to CSS that will load on active pages. But in my case, this type of pagination will, again, load where these cabinets are, because that's the logic I ended up with in the previous one. Therefore, for pagination, I can also write code in the file of this block. So, did I rush with FlexAm? Let's see. Yes, of course I rushed because there are other containers inside. We won't use Flex on this container and we'll redo it. This is how we change the selector. For all elements that are inside from PMP, and I will set the following styles. So let's take a look in the dark version. In the dark version, their colors change. So we copy the button color from the variable. They are just hard-coded. So I think we simply don't have a variable called white contrast. That's why our color is dark. No, white contrast does exist. Then why is the color not inherited? But it's kind of dark. Here, on the contrary, we need to specify, yes, it turns out in the dark version, it's white, yes, we need to somehow switch it. On the contrary, let's look at the variables. Maybe we already have something like white contrast and need to do it for black contrast, but since it doesn't exist, let's create black contrast. Therefore, here it will be white color. And this light to logic. There are white buttons. That's good. Let's go back to the white and current page. With the quarantine class, we need to change the iPhone. That's good. One moment, it seems to me that there is some error here, some kind of shift. Yes, no, it seems even the grid overlays evenly. It's bold to say that 1 and 2 shift to the left. Okay, let's move on. These are not so important in this course. We pay minimal attention to them. I'm more interested in functionality and the research team. In this way, we have implemented another block. This will, of course, work on internal pages as well. So now I will edit. I went into the category, and in the category I have 100% because there is no class. Let's take this class, which we set on the post template and set it for the category as well. And even better, let's make a backup. That is, we'll go to the code editor. And almost everything we have here we'll copy and paste into our template. In theory, we will have to recreate these pages on the real site. And to avoid recreating them manually and remembering these classes, they will already be written in the code. Therefore, in the templates, we go to the News archive and replace the code with ours. Of course, these photos from the local machine will not be loaded, but all these other settings will be loaded and you won't have to add them manually. Switching back, Visual Editor further. Along the admin panel, I think it doesn't make sense to add a placeholder here because it's already quite clear. Yes, this is a template for news. So it edits something additional. I won't do it here either. This class probably will present in taxonomies. On post template. Save and refresh from the pages of clearing. Cache. And, of course, we'll remove the group here too. Let's add Rapier on So we'll remove the group, delete on query look as well. Let's add wrapper. And test our page well now. So this page does have, of course, again, a margin error after all. I thought we had a margin set on the footer, but it isn't. It's not set. Then we'll probably set a margin on this wrapper. But these are, again, minor technical details. They don't really relate to the lesson and course. Well, let's fix it then. I will do it like this. We essentially have a VIP block, a block var. This is a block on which we added class in the wrapper. And specifically on this, when there is a wrapper, I add a margin bottom. Let's set it to 120 pixels. Then actually we should take this value through the clamp. I just want to make sure, yes, now this padding is being added, everything is fine. Specifically on the wrapper, that is, if it were to collapse, then it would edit to everything. And if we are on the news, then the next block, you see here, hooray, the margin is on the next block. It also gets consumed. So our wrapper has 120. But since the next block also has a margin top of 120, they cancel each other out. They consume each other here. So there's no shift, and you can use this kind of alternative approach. Let me probably right away add it through the clamp. And with that, guys, we'll finish this lesson. See you in the next session.